Liam Lawson has been related to a spectacular promotion in F1, as the Austrian squad have now realised that they are under a massive threat to lose a huge talent from their pool. With Marko opening up about the possibilities of replacing Ricciardo with Lawson, Red Bull have fired back at these allegations, but one thing is certain: changes will come sooner rather than later, and we could be seeing a brand new lineup for the Italian-based squad. But what will the landscape look like? And more importantly, is this the last season of Ricciardo in the sport? It goes without saying that the biggest comeback on the grid was made by Daniel Ricciardo after his poor performance in McLaren in 2021 and 2022 has left him seatless and replaced by Oscar Piastri. But he saw his fortunes being turned around from AlphaTauri, the team that groomed him for the Red Bull seat back in 2012. Regardless, that didn't turn out quite so well, as his goal was to replace Perez and be a strong second option for the Austrian squad, a mission that is looking very distant right now from this point of view. This is why many have criticised the decision of Racing Bulls to keep Ricciardo rather than promote the young talent like Lawson, who has been quite competitive in the 5-race stint he did against Tsunoda back in 2023, when he was replacing Ricciardo due to the broken wrist that the Aussie sustained in Zandvoort. At a certain point, the Kiwi driver was the highest ranking one for the Italian-based team at P9 in Singapore, which then again hyped up the entire F-world that we're going to see him in a Red Bull or AlphaTauri for a longer period of time. These talks have been kind of simmered down from Christian Horner, who although promised a seat for Lawson from 2025 onwards by not allowing him to talk to other teams in 2024, but in the past couple of months the 50-year-old Brit said that it's now a question as to whether or not we'll see Lawson race in one of their teams in the foreseeable future. This decision has been questioned by Helmut Marko, who went on to directly slam the performance of Ricciardo as not good enough to be considered for the Red Bull seat, which was the primary reason as to why he made a return to the sport in the first place. Ricciardo's priorities have changed in the past couple of months, and from his desire to retire with Red Bull, the Aussies' hopes have shifted towards remaining with the Faenza-based squad and help them in the rebuild process, as well as return to the midfield. However, Helmut Marko feels like this isn't the core nature of the team, and when talking about the future drivers lineup for Racing Bulls, the Austrian veteran went on to say, "The shareholders of Racing Bulls have made it clear that this is a junior team and we have to act accordingly. The goal was that Ricciardo would be considered for Red Bull Racing with exceptional performances, but that seat now belongs to Sergio Perez, so that plan is no longer valid. We will have to put a young driver in there soon, and that would be Liam Lawson." This is as direct of a threat for Ricciardo as it could get, and even though he has the protection of Christian Horner, who was the main facilitator for this transfer to happen and for Ricciardo's career to receive a second chance, might not be in a situation to salvage his career at this point. The performance of Daniel is rather questionable, despite him earning a P8 finish in Canada while Tsunoda failed to score points. And with the feedback on the car, his experience as well as the marketing value, Ricciardo brings a lot more to the table than the points in the championship. But there comes a point where enough is enough, and when the performance isn't there or isn't meeting the expectations, the harsh reality of being well into your 30s and driving for a junior team may hit you hard. That is about to happen to Ricciardo, who, although helped send the team in a new direction, has also come to understand that Red Bull are risking it heavily to lose Lawson to another team, as we all saw what he's capable of. Another very interesting situation that the Austrian team needs to keep an eye on is Verstappen and his contractual obligations with Red Bull, because even though the 3-time world champion signed a deal with Red Bull until 2028 and expects to see the end of it, this might change now that Mercedes are on the active hunt for the Dutchman. In the past couple of races, the Silver Arrows managed to cut down half a second of performance compared to the Austrian squad, and while they're still away from fighting for race wins and potentially championships, 2 consecutive podiums finishes and P3 and P4 order goes to show that they might be very well back in the top 3, with Lawson expecting even more performances to come to the W15. All of this will prompt Verstappen to think about the future of his career, as it's now evident that the RB20 has been caught out in pure development, with McLaren undoubtedly having the fastest car in the grid. But it's the 3-time world champion who's making all of the difference. Be that as it may, even Helmut Marko admitted that this cannot go on for much longer, and Max cannot always drive perfect races like the one in Barcelona, which will then turn around to bite them in their backs given the fact that Perez is nowhere to be found on the grid, let alone have all of the Austrian team's trust be placed on his shoulders. with Red Bull showing zero to no interest in promoting Tsunoda, partially because he joined the team thanks to Honda's program and is now under threat to leave with the Japanese manufacturer. The Austrian team need to have an alternative if Verstappen decides to continue somewhere else. Obviously, Lawson would need some time to adapt to the Austrian squad, but in the 5-race stint in 2023, he's shown that he has everything that a young rookie at the time needs in order to race full-time, which is why he's now also considered for other teams such as Audi. Christian Horner has opened up on the recent driver's situation in Red Bull, and while he said that there won't be any changes in the following period, he admitted that there are situations in which the team needs to react in the best way possible for the greater good of the squad. And this might be one of those situations. Adding further to this extent, Horner said, "We are acutely aware of all the options, and over the summer break we will sit down and start to look at it. The more races we have, the more information, the more data we have. So it's where we don't need to be in a rush. No change to the driver lineup for the foreseeable future as of now." This, however, means literally nothing said from Red Bull, because we must take you a bit back in time and remind you of the situation with Nick de Vries. Even though the Dutchman was promised a bit more time to develop his driving skills due to the harsh environment he found himself in, after a 10-race stint in 2023, he was subsequently dropped and replaced with Ricciardo, who did some amazing lap times during the tyre testing in Silverstone. All of this goes to show that when Red Bull says they have something figured out with their drivers, it usually turns the other way around. And while Marko's influence over the drivers' lineup has kind of diminished after the De Vries experiment failed, what he has to say right now definitely holds a lot of hard argument points that are going against Ricciardo. Many experts and fans have criticized Red Bull for actually not giving Ricciardo the opportunity to race next to Verstappen and show what he's capable of, because at this point they're not losing anything given the poor performance of Perez. The Mexican driver has managed to secure a 2-year contract while being nowhere near his teammate in a constant deficit of 5 to 8 tenths per second, with the latest race being almost a minute of a lap time deficit compared to Verstappen. A massive factor here was the fact that Perez was on a different 3-stop strategy, but nonetheless he wasn't ready to fight with the top dogs, and it's now obvious that if Verstappen is not winning the races, the Austrian squad would be in massive danger. This might be one of the primary reasons why they want to put Lawson in one of the Red Bull seats and groom him for the future, because as the Kiwi driver said, he won't be waiting too long if an opportunity doesn't open up in some other teams. When talking about this matter in a greater extent, Lawson went on to say, "Red Bull is one of the most competitive teams in Formula 1 right now, so if I would choose, I would drive for them. But my dream is to be in Formula 1, and if it can't be with them, then obviously I need to try and make that happen with somebody else. At the end of the day, the teams only care about what we're doing in a Formula 1 car, and I knew we would be judged on the races I did at the time. It was race by race." All of this goes to show that Lawson's future, although seemed not very bright a couple of weeks ago, could be a huge twist in the upcoming period, and he could be challenging Tsunoda for the Red Bull seat sooner rather than later. Do you think that this is a realistic scenario that will happen as early as in the middle of the 2024 season? And more importantly, do you think that this is the proper move for Racing Bulls? Let us know in the comments below, and once you do that, make sure to click on the video that's appearing on your screen right now.